students, and welcome to the platform of Yupp Master, where we are introducing you and we are taking you towards the whole journey of your NEET exams. Alright, so we have started with the chapter of Kingdom Animalia and we have covered various phyla until now. We have reached the phylum of Arthropoda. So, shall we begin this? Yes? Are you with me today? So, let's begin, and we begin with the phylum Arthropoda. Okay, so this phylum is the most successful phylum in this whole world. However many living animals are there, most of them, in fact 70 to 75% of them are arthropods. Did you know that? Well, so beginning with the phylum Arthropoda, these are those phylums, these are those animals which are actually creepy and give you goosebumps maybe, right? So first of all, why do we call them as arthropods? Because arthros means joint and poda means legs. So this means that these are those organisms which are going to be having joint legs or joint appendages. Okay, as I just said right now, these are the largest and the most successful phylum. Imagine that. We would think that we are more successful, but no, it is these arthropods which are more successful than any of us. All right, so we see that they are actually forming 70 to 75% of all animals surviving here. Okay, so we see here what is the habit. It is either they could be solitary, means they could be living alone, or they may be found in amongst groups, amongst their friends. That would be called as colonial. Okay, also we can see about their habitat. They may be, most of them are free living. Now if I am saying that they are free living, what does this word mean? The opposite of free living would be parasitic, and free living means that it can go and take its own and derive its own nourishment, but parasitic means that it is going to be depending on another organism for its nourishment. So when it goes and depends on another organism for its nourishment, then at that time it is going to harm the other organism. That's why we call it as a parasite. Okay, so after the habit and the habitat, let's continue ahead. We see that arthropods are providing the earliest identifiable fossils. Okay, I hope you all know what are fossils of land animals, and that too from about 419 million years ago. This is just a bit of advice for you all, okay, or just a bit of information. Now, talking about the body divisions of an arthropod. Now, we see that the arthropods could be divided either into two parts, okay, means the whole body either could be found in two parts or it may be found in three parts also, okay. So, let's see, when we see over here in this diagram that you're seeing, there is a head, there will be a neck region and there will be a thorax region. Sometimes what we see is the head and the neck region can fuse, and that is the part that would be called as a cephalothorax, okay, and that would always obviously be followed by an abdomen. Now, we also see that the appendages, as I said a little while ago, why are they called as arthropods? Because their appendages are joint, okay. So, arthros means joint and podium means foot, alright. Now, seeing the skeleton, this is the most important characteristic when we consider an arthropod. In arthropods, we see that the body is covered with a tough chitinous cuticle. Okay, now I'd like you to pay attention to this word and look at the spelling of it. Okay, it is spelled out as C-H-I-T-I-N. So when you're saying C-H-I-T-I-N, you need to know it is pronounced as chitin. Please, none of my students here are going to make a mistake of pronouncing it as chitin. It's not chitin, it's supposed to be called as chitin, alright. So, the body is covered with a tough chitinous cuticle, and that is what is forming the exoskeleton for these arthropods, okay. Can you see over here how that chitinous cuticle is appearing, okay. Next, we see that this exoskeleton is periodically shed off, okay. Like how you know how the snake sheds off its skin. Similarly, even these arthropods are seen that they would periodically shed off their exoskeleton. And why do they do this? This shedding off of exoskeleton is just so that the organism inside can grow, alright. So for that animal to be growing inside, this tough exoskeleton needs to be shed off. But do you know that that exoskeleton is going to reappear, or rather it's going to be formed again within a span of mostly 8 hours. Okay, within a span of 8 hours, we see that that new exoskeleton can be formed again. So, what is the name that is given for this shedding off of exoskeleton? Well, it's called as molting, or you may also call it as ecdysis. Molting or ecdysis is the name given for shedding off of this exoskeleton. And why is it doing it? For its growth. Okay, so for the growth of this organism, we have the, or they have the molting process going on. All right. So that was about the skeleton. Now, if I'm talking about skeleton, let's not forget about muscles. Now, isn't this the very first time that we've heard about muscles? We began with the phylum Porifera. We continued with Cnidaria, Platyhelminthes, Astelminthes, Annelida. We finally reached the arthropods. And this is the very first time when we are actually talking about muscles. Which muscles? We're talking about striated muscles here. Okay, so here the muscles are striated, as you can see over here. In their appendages, muscles are present. All right. Now, talking about the body cavity. Body cavity, may I call it as coelom? Okay. Now, what about the coelom in an arthropod? Do you remember that? Yes. Well, we see here that the body cavity over here is called as a hemocoel. Why was it called as hemocoel? Does anyone remember that? Remember, these are all arthropods, means that it is annelid onwards. And from our table, if you remember, we marked a star on annelid. For this, you can go back to the video of the general characteristics for classifying animals, where we have a table where we have demarcated the distinguishing characters. And when we spoke about coelom, I told you that annelid onwards, all the organisms are going to be eucoelomates, which means that they are going to be having a proper split mesoderm, in which the mesoderm is going to be covering the alimentary canal and lining the body wall. All right. So these are eucoelomates. Now, talking about the eucoelomates, the coelom over here, that body cavity that we have, that the arthropod has, is called as a hemocoel. Why is it called as hemocoel? Because it is having an open circulatory system, which means that the body cavity is going to be completely filled with the body fluid, which is none other than the blood. Okay, and that's why the body cavity is going to be called as hemocoel. All right. Now, look at this diagram here. Over here, it's indicating the body wall or the cavity of a mature arthropod. When we see in adults, okay, the coelom here, that is the cavity when the splitting of mesoderm occurred, that coelom is said to be reduced. What is the meaning of a reduced coelom? It is reduced, or it is said to be reduced, in order to accommodate all the other organs inside it. So, the coelom space, as the organism is growing, as that arthropod is growing, the space of the coelom is getting smaller or is getting less. Why? Because that part is being occupied with the organs of that animal. Okay, so that's why it is said that the coelom is reduced in adult arthropods. All right. Okay. Now we see here, talking about coelom, the very next part, let's continue with the circulatory system. Okay, why am I linking the circulatory system with the coelom? Remember, I told you that the coelom of an arthropod, what was it called as? It was filled with the fluid, the circulating fluid. That's why we called it as the hemocoel. Okay, so we called the body cavity as hemocoel. And now moving on to the circulatory system, as I said just a little while back, that it is an open type of circulatory system. Now, what does this open type of circulatory system mean? It means that there are going to be absolutely no blood vessels at all. There will be no blood vessels. Okay, so this means that whatever circulating fluid is present, all of that is going to be spilled in the body cavity. The body cavity will basically be filled with its circulating fluid, and that circulating fluid is going to be whitish in color most of the times. Okay, most of the times it is white in color, and that is why the circulating fluid is mostly called as hemocoel. lymph. Why is it called as hemolymph? Because in our body, lymph is white in color. Over here also, the blood is white in color. Why is the blood white in color most of the times? Because they don't have the pigment called as hemoglobin. It is hemoglobin which is present in our blood, which makes our blood red in color. They lack hemoglobin, and that's why it is called as hemolymph. All right. Now, when we talk about most of the invertebrates, where is the heart located? Okay. Talking about our body, our heart is found in the front side. Okay. And in the front side of our body, we will call this as the ventral side. Okay. But when we're talking about the invertebrates and the lower animals, their heart is situated in the backside, and the backside is generally called as dorsal side. So if you see in this diagram that we've mentioned here, can you see very beautifully over here what I'm highlighting right now? This is the situation of the heart in this arthropod. Okay, so can you see it is located on its backside, and that's why I'm saying that the heart is dorsal in position. Now, just a while back, I told you that they don't have the respiratory pigment called as hemoglobin, didn't I? Which is why the blood is mostly white in color. But there are certain arthropods which have a respiratory pigment which contains the element called as copper. Now, whenever it contains copper, copper is always going to be imparting a blue color. So, since that pigment is containing copper, which will do the work of respiration there, that's why that pigment is going to be called as hemocyanin. Hemocyanin, because copper present in it is going to be giving a bluish tinge to that blood, and we see that their blood appears slightly bluish in color. This is found mostly in molluscans, but also found in certain arthropods too. Which arthropods can be seen in the crustaceans and can also be seen in the chelicerates. All right, so these are two classes of arthropods which you can observe, where you can observe hemocyanin pigment present in the blood, which is imparting a blue color. But otherwise, most of the arthropods don't have hemocyanin. That's why their blood is going to be called as hemolymph, like in insects. All right. Alright, so that was the circulatory system of an arthropod. Moving on to the nervous system. Now, nervous system of an arthropod, over here also, yet the development of a proper organ called as the brain has not yet occurred. So what do we have here basically? There is going to be a nerve ring. We had seen a nerve ring even when we studied annelids, right? When we did the earthworm also, we learned about a nerve ring. So here also there's going to be a nerve ring. The nerve ring is basically going to be consisting of three major parts. Okay. Now if I name these parts, we had labeled them when we had done earthworm, right? So in that of an arthropod, there's going to be ganglia, and then there's going to be the connectives. What is a ganglia? Ganglia is a group of cytons, isn't it? So there are three structures which come together and are making the nerve ring. The very first structure is going to be called as the supraesophageal ganglia. Then below the esophagus would be a subesophageal ganglia. And in order for it to make a ring, there's going to be connectives. And those connectives are going to, since they are circular, they're going to be called as circumesophageal connectives. Alright, so these three components, the supraesophageal ganglia, the subesophageal ganglia, and the circumesophageal connectives together are going to make a ring-like structure, which we're going to be calling as a nerve ring. Now, details of this is going to be taught when we are going to be learning about the cockroach together. Alright, so when we do the chapter of cockroach, there will be a detailing of this nerve ring, where is it positioned and how is it situated. Okay. So first of all, in arthropod, because we're learning right now only the general characteristics, I'd like you to just remember that there is a nerve ring, and in that nerve ring, the supraesophageal ganglia, okay, that is a pair of ganglia. And because it is situated in the head region, we can go ahead and we can call that as the brain of that arthropod, okay. So brain of the arthropod is basically just a group of or a collection of ganglia, all right. So in the nervous system of an arthropod, there is a nerve ring, and also can you see here that there is the presence of a double nerve cord. Can you see here how I'm drawing two lines? And that nerve cord that's there, can you see that there are two lines over here? That's why I'm saying it is double. And where is it situated? The nervous system is situated ventrally. Remember when I spoke about the heart, I said that it was situated dorsally. So when we talk about the whole body cavity, the dorsal part is occupied by the circulatory or the heart, and the ventral part of the body is occupied by the nerve cord, okay. And the nerve cord is in two lines, hence we're calling it as a double ventral nerve cord, okay. So the nervous system of an arthropod consists of a nerve ring and a double ventral nerve cord, alright. Also we see when we talk about the nervous system, let us not forget about the sense organs, okay. So talking about the sense organs, alright, just a minute. Alright, when we talk about the sense organs, we see that these are animals which have very developed sense organs. Which type of organs? They've got antennae present, alright, for detecting various types of senses around them. They have antennae. Then they have eyes also. Now in eyes, they have the compound eyes and they also have simple eyes. Now when we learn about the cockroach, we're going to be learning in more detail what exactly are the compound eyes, okay. So these are types of sense organs. Along with antennae, along with eyes, there are these important sense organs which are also called as statocysts. What are these statocysts? Statocysts are structures which are there in that organism which helps it maintain its own balance, okay. So balancing is being done by an arthropod with the help of the statocysts, alright. So this was all about the nervous system, and also we covered about the sensory organs, alright. Okay, moving on, talking about the digestive system. Now when I talk about digestive system, can I ask you one basic question? Wouldn't we want to know whether it is complete or whether it is incomplete? So that brings us to, what is the meaning of an incomplete digestive system? What is the meaning of a complete digestive system? Incomplete digestive system means that there's going to be only one opening. There will not be a mouth and an anus. And a complete digestive system indicates that there's going to be a mouth on one end of that animal, and then there's going to be an anus on another end of the animal, okay. So talking about the digestive system in an arthropod, it is, first of all, understand that it is a complete digestive system. What exactly do they feed on? These are animals which are feeding on detritus food. They also feed on flesh, okay. This is why I told you that they can give you goosebumps, okay. So they feed on dead and decaying matter as well. They have a complete digestive system, as I just mentioned. This figure to your right is the digestive system of a cockroach, and when we do that chapter together, we will learn about all the different parts of this and what are their functions. So right now, all I'd like you to see in this diagram is that, look over here, there is one part where there's going to be the mouth, and then there is another part at the opposite end which would be the anal region, alright. So we see here that the digestive system is complete. It has a mouth and it has a terminal anus on the opposite end. We also see here that they have mouth parts, alright. The mouth parts are highly evolved mouth parts. They even have structures like an upper jaw, a lower jaw. They've got teeth over there. Mostly I'll tell you that when we're talking about an arthropod, and when we talk about any structure which is going to be tough, which is going to give support, which is going to give strength, most of the times it is going to be made up of the polysaccharide which is called as chitin. Remember chitin? What was the spelling of chitin? We learned the spelling together, didn't we? It was called as CHITIN, and we are not going to pronounce it as chitin. We're going to pronounce it as chitin, alright. So we see here that the mouth parts are highly evolved, and these are going to be used for biting, for sucking and for chewing too. So you can understand that there are going to be different regions of the mouth parts which are going to be helping this arthropod perform the different activities in order to take food in. Alright, so we also see over here that the digestive system can be divided into 3 regions, as you see over here. If you'd like to demarcate it, you can start with the first region over here. This begins as the foregut. All right, next region starting from here, this begins as the midgut, and finally you have the hindgut. So you have here the foregut, then you have the midgut, and finally we have the hindgut. So we see it's divided into 3 regions. Okay, now after digestive system, let us move on to the excretory system of an arthropod. When we talk about excretory system, the first thing we'd like to know is the mode of excretion. When I say mode of excretion, what do I mean? I mean that all the excretory waste coming out of this organism, is it going to be mostly ammonia? Will it be urea, or would it be uric acid? Which of the 3? Talking about arthropods, the maximum excretory waste material that these organisms are removing out is going to be uric acid. And because it is uric acid, we say that these organisms are uricotelic. Okay, we say that these organisms are uricotelic. Now, talking about what are the different organs which are present in an arthropod for excretion, let's look into those. When we talk about insects, for excretion, the insects have Malpighian tubules. Okay, these are called as Malpighian tubules. These Malpighian tubules are present near the digestive system, and what are they going to do? All the excretory waste that is present, that is formed, is going to be taken, and because it is near the digestive system, they will be pouring the secretions, pouring all that uric acid into the digestive system so that the waste can come out through the anal region. So can you see over here how it's written here that this is the midgut, okay, and over here can you see that this is the hindgut over here, and can you see how the Malpighian tubules are located between the midgut and the hindgut? You can see these here, and I'll tell you, in fact, there are around, when we talk about like an insect like a cockroach, there are around 120 Malpighian tubules. Alright, these are all yellow in color, and what are they going to do? These are going to take all that uric acid and they're going to pour it inside the digestive system, and through the digestive system along with all the other waste, even this uric acid would come out. So when we talk about insects belonging to arthropod, for excretion, they have the Malpighian tubules. Alright, now coming next, what is another organ of excretion? There could be an organ which is called as green glands. Okay, now these green glands are present in animals like a crayfish, okay, like a prawn. Can you see over here? Look at the whole diagram. Can you identify where that green colored structure is? Isn't it right here? Well, let me tell you one thing. Just because it is called as green glands does not mean that the gland is green in color. In fact, I'll tell you, it's called as green glands because the excretory waste that is being formed, that is uric acid only, but that excretory waste which is being formed is actually green in color, and that's why it is called as green glands. Now, look at the location of it. Are you seeing where exactly it is located? Wouldn't you actually imagine that if it is an excretory system, we would expect it to be somewhere in the rear end of that animal. But look at where this is. Isn't it right near the antenna? So we say that over here these green glands may also be called as antennary glands. What are they called as? They are called as antennary glands. Alright, are you all with me? Are you following me? So we're talking about the excretory system. Alright, now talking about the green glands, after the green glands we also see there is one more type of excretory system, and those are called as the coxal glands. Okay, as you can see that they look very similar to the green glands, okay, but the location is very similar, but these are called as coxal glands, And can you see that it's given over here how the exact structure of this coxal gland is appearing? Okay, so this is how the coxal gland appears. So we saw for excretion there are basically three types of organs which could be present in an arthropod. The first one being the Malpighian tubules, the second one being the green glands, also we call them as antennary glands placed near the antenna, and the third one being the coxal glands. Okay, now after the excretory system, let us move on to the most important, and that would be the reproductive system. All right, now these are the animals where even from the last phylum we had done, when we had done Aschelminthes, that was one phylum where we had seen that there was a male and a female separate. Okay, but then when we moved on to annelids, we saw that there was no separate male and female. Okay, now coming next to the arthropods. All right, coming next to the arthropods, we see that the male arthropod and female arthropods are separate. All right, so we're coming to the reproductive system. We see that these animals are said to be dioecious. What is the meaning of dioecious? Dioecious means that male and female are separate. Okay, tell me if you know a word which is the meaning of, or which rather is a term used for the male and female being in one organism. Didn't we call this as a hermaphrodite, or we can also call it as monoecious? But talking about arthropods, these organisms are dioecious. All right, now dioecious, or we may also call this as gonochory. All right, gonochory, dioecious are actually the same thing, where you have a separate male and you have a separate female. All right, also we see that over here the fertilization in an arthropod is actually of internal fertilization. There's going to be copulation, or there's going to be mating occurring between a male and a female, and internal fertilization. And how are the young ones laid? Are there eggs? Means, is it oviparous or is it going to be viviparous? Let's see that. Well, talking about arthropods, they are mostly oviparous, but as many other things, there is an exception, and the exception in an arthropod for oviparous would be a scorpion. Can you see over here? This is the diagram of the scorpion, and can you see these are all of its young ones? Okay, so basically what happens is, it is going to, the shell of it, the top upper layer of it is going to be removed, and all those young scorpions would just come out, which means that this is a viviparous arthropod. All right, so most of the arthropods are oviparous, but talking about the scorpion, this is an arthropod which is a viviparous arthropod. All right, now when we talk about the development, you must have heard when you were young that a caterpillar turns into a lovely, beautiful butterfly, right? So can you see how the stages are there? Look at that beautiful diagram, how this caterpillar is undergoing development, and while it is developing, it has an intermediate stage which we call as a larva stage, don't we? So this larvae stage, whenever it is present, don't we call that as an indirect development? Yes, development which is having a larva is called as an indirect development. Some arthropods can develop directly where they do not have any larva stage present. Okay, so we have both the development types present, indirect as well as direct development. All right, now very interesting topic. Sometimes some arthropods are produced without fertilization happening at all. What is fertilization? We all know what fertilization is. It is fusion of egg and a sperm. So basically, whenever an egg and sperm fuse, they're going to be forming a zygote, right? This is basics. We all know this. But then there are certain animals, or there are certain arthropods also, which are going to give rise to young ones without any fertilization happening at all. Can you believe that? So there's going to be no fusion of egg and sperm. No fusion of egg and sperm, but still it will give rise to a young one. So this is actually going to be called as parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis means development without fertilization. And one of the most important or the most common examples which is used for arthropods in parthenogenesis would be that of a honeybee. Okay, would be that of a honeybee. All right. Do you know that every honeycomb has got thousands of bees, right? Now, in those thousands of bees, tell me how many queen bees are there? Do you know that? Tell me quickly. Write in the chat box if you know how many queen bees are there. Well, there is only one queen. Rani to ek hi hoti hai. So, only one queen bee, and that one queen bee has the potential to be laying several eggs. Now, not necessary that all the eggs are going to be fertilized. So some of the eggs are fertilized and some of them remain unfertilized. Okay. The ones which remain unfertilized are the ones which are going to be developing into the male honeybee. The ones which are going to be fertilized, those are the ones which are developing into the female honeybee. So what I mean to tell you is that there can be development of the eggs into an organism even without the fertilization taking place. And this type of development is what we're going to call as parthenogenesis. What do we call it as? We call it as parthenogenesis. All right. So that was about the honeybee. That was all about the reproductive system of the arthropods. All right. So basically, children, we studied so many of the different systems when we talk about an arthropod, didn't we? First of all, I'd like you to remember certain important points that we just mentioned, right, as we come to the middle of this lecture. First of all, tell me, exoskeleton, okay? First, we remember that arthropod was the most successful phylum, didn't we? How many percent of the animals is an arthropod forming? Yes, it was around 70 to 75%. Yes, 70 to 75% of all animals was belonging to arthropoda. Okay. Tell me, what was the exoskeleton made up of? Wasn't that exoskeleton made up of a material or a polysaccharide which is called as chitin? Okay, we're going to call this as chitin. Remember that. So it has a chitinous exoskeleton. This is the first phylum where we are actually seeing striated muscles. Okay, we're seeing striated muscles present here. We are also seeing that when we're talking about the digestive system, there is going to be a complete digestive system. We also saw that there is a foregut, there is a midgut, there is a hindgut, right? What about when we talk about the excretory system? Do you remember the names of the excretory system? Okay, when we talk about excretory, okay, talking about excretory, there were three types of excretory organs present in an arthropod. There could be malpighian tubules. All right. There could be green glands. Do you remember the other name for green glands? They were also called as antennary glands. Okay. And after that, there was another one which is called as coxal glands. Okay. There could be coxal glands also. Remember these points? Also remember the reproductive system. Yes, the reproductive system. Okay, there was, first of all, remember that the male and the female are separate. What were the words we used for it? Didn't we use the word dioecious? Okay, along with dioecious, we even use that they could be called as gonochory. All right, so these are dioecious animals. Over here, the fertilization is seen to be internal fertilization. We also had seen that the development may either be direct or there may be a larval form, showing that there could be an indirect development too. All right. Okay. Now, let's move on ahead. We've done almost half of it. All right. Moving on to the segmentation. Do you remember the different types of segmentations that could be? This is going to be helping you to explain to you that segmentations are not present only in worms. Okay. Generally, when we talk about segments, we always imagine the body of a worm where we're going to be seeing the lines which are indicating segments. But segments are not always about those worms and always about the lines being seen. All right. There could be even segmentation present over here, like how we have in an arthropod. Okay. This is called as a metameric segmentation here too, where there's going to be the external features also looking very similar, or appearing exactly similar to that of the internal part of it. All right. So this is a metameric segmentation seen in an arthropod. When we talk about the respiratory system, this is very fascinating. The respiratory system over here are containing gills, they're containing trachea, they could be made up of book lungs or book gills. Now, gills and trachea you can understand, but why called as book lungs and why called as book gills? Can you see over here how? Can you see over here? This is the whole structure, this is the location, and this is the way that the book lungs are present. Can you see that over there? Okay. These are called as book lungs or book gills because they are actually looking like how you have a stack of books. Alright. Can you see that closer over here? So they're actually looking like a stack of books upon each other, which is why the name is given as book lungs or book gills. Alright. So these are what are the different organs for respiratory system of an arthropod. Alright. Moving next, talking about the most important part, that is the economic importance of an arthropod. Okay, so arthropods can be useful, arthropods can be harmful. Okay, most of us when we look at them, they're only harmful even by visual sight. Okay, but they're actually harmful too. Talking about the economic importance, let's see over here. First, we begin with the useful arthropods. Okay, useful arthropods like the honeybees. How do we use honeybees? Honeybees are used for wax. Honeybees are used for honey. Honeybees are also used this bee wax that is produced. Okay, so basically what happens is after all the honey is removed from the comb, whatever is left off is going to be taken with a knife and it is going to be scraped off. And what is produced from there is actually used as bee wax. Alright. Also sometimes bee venom, then royal jelly. Okay, what is royal jelly? Royal jelly is basically what the female honeybee feeds on. Okay, so it is the food of that honeybee which is produced in that honeycomb. Whenever the females feed on it, the female which has fed royal jelly the maximum is the one which is going to become the next queen bee. But that's a part. But we can also be extracting royal jelly from that honeycomb. It is very proteinaceous. Also, we see other useful arthropods would be the lobsters, the prawns, the crabs. How are all of these used? These are all going to be used as seafood. So, if you see even in India, when we talk about certain states like Bengal and all, these are the areas where seafood is used even more because they are in the coastal regions. Alright. So, being a part of the coastal regions, these are animals which are useful more, okay, because they are actually serving as a daily food requirement for the people there. Also, the lovely saris that we have in our tradition, in our culture, made up of silk. Where exactly does that silk come from? It comes from all these silk worms. Okay, so can you see over here? You can see this worm over here. This is the silkworm, and the most common worm that we see is called as the Bombyx mori. All right, what is it called as? It's called as Bombyx mori. Okay, so this Bombyx mori worm is actually going to be responsible for major part of the silk production. And can you see over here how it is forming silk? And that silk is taken and is going to be cleaned, and that is actually the silk threads that are there. Alright, so all those silk threads are taken and woven together in order to form the different materials. Alright, so these were all the useful arthropods for production and for our usefulness. But then there are those arthropods which are going to cause harm to us. Okay, there are those arthropods which we don't want at all. And I think you agree with me when I say that the most irritating arthropod ever is the mosquito, right? That is not only irritating, it not only doesn't let you sleep at night, but it also lands up and giving us diseases. So there is Anopheles, there is Culex, there is Aedes. These are all the different mosquitoes which are actually responsible for producing diseases. Now, what happens is these mosquitoes, because they are responsible for producing diseases, these can be called as vectors. What are they called as? These can be called as vectors. So, you have Anopheles, Culex and Aedes. Anopheles is responsible for production or rather for transmitting the disease of malaria. Culex would be giving the disease of what do you say, the filariasis, okay. Then Aedes is responsible for producing the disease of dengue. So these are those irritating mosquitoes which give us diseases, all right. So these are the harmful arthropods, all right. Let's now come towards the different examples which are given, okay, of the arthropods, okay, of various classes. Let's put those examples together. We learned the common name, we can also learn the scientific names of them. The very first arthropod, which we have a whole different section we're going to be having of it, and that is none other than the ugly looking cockroach which you can find in your homes. And that the scientific name for a cockroach is Periplanata, okay. So it is actually called as Periplanata americana. Our MCQs which come generally have only Periplanata, but always remember Periplanata means cockroach, all right. Then when we talk about this over here, when we're talking about these prawns, that is the scientific name is called as Peliman. Then you have crabs, and other examples would be the spider, that is Arania, okay, that is also an arthropod. Then the useful arthropods, which were Apis mellifera, that is honeybee, all right. Then you have the Bombyx mori, which is none other than the silkworm, which helps in silk production, okay. Then we have here the lassifer. What is lassifer? It can also be called as, or rather the scientific name would be Tachardia lacca, okay, and that is helping in lac production. Did you know that India is the only country which has almost around 80 to 85% of the lac which is produced worldwide is produced in India, okay. So you have the lassifer, also called as Tachardia lacca, which is an important example. Then look at this here. This is called as limulus. What is it called as? It's called as limulus, and this limulus is also called as king crab, or it may be called as the living fossil. Now, what is basically a fossil? Fossil basically means something which is going to be, extinct. But this here is not extinct. It is living. But why is it called as a fossil? It's called as a fossil because ever since it has come into existence till now, it has barely ever shown any signs of evolution. Now, ever since our ancestors have come into existence, we have actually evolved from monkeys to human beings. So that is a big course of evolution which has occurred. But this animal, ever since it has come into existence hundreds of years ago till today, there is actually no signs of evolution being seen, which is why we are calling this limulus as the living fossil, because there are no signs of evolution. All right. Okay. Also, look at this here, the locusta, that is the grasshopper. I think a couple of weeks before, there was a whole storm of locusts, or a whole storm of grasshoppers which were flying from all over from north end of India and heading towards the east coast into Mumbai and all those cities over there. So this was locusta, okay, grasshopper. Then another one. This is the most important arthropod for your NEET exams, alright. This is called as the lepisma, and it is also called as a silverfish, okay. Why is it called as silverfish? Because look at the shell of it, look at that exoskeleton. Isn't that exoskeleton shining just like the scales of a fish? Exactly like the scales of a fish, we can see that it is shining. Now, because it looks like a scales of a fish, that's why it is given the name silverfish. But look at its appendages. Can you see its appendages over here? The appendages are joint at the level of the thorax, and this is what is the quality which is making this organism an arthropod. Alright, so this is an arthropod. It's called as lepisma, and the common name of it is silverfish. Now what happens here is, in MCQs, they have a tendency to confuse you with this example because it's commonly called as silverfish, but it is an arthropod. Okay, it is an arthropod. Alright, don't forget that. Now, so with those examples, let's move on for the subphyla which are present in this phylum of Arthropoda. There are 3 subphyla present. First one called as the Trilobita, second one called as the Chelicerata, and the third one being the Mandibulata. Okay, Let us see exactly why are the names given. Okay, first of all, Trilobita. When I say Trilobita, lobe means the different lobes which are present. Can you see over here in this very example that's given here? This is going to be one lobe and these are the other two lobes. Okay, so you can see that there are three lobes present, out of which one is present in the middle, so you call it as the median lobe. The other two are present on the sides, so you call it these as the lateral lobes. All right, so this is Trilobita. These are actually the ones which are not at all in existence right now. These are all extinct. Whenever they were present, they were marine arthropods. All right, the body here is being divided into, as I said just a little while back, there is one median lobe and then there are two lateral lobes over here. So that was Trilobita. Then we also say that it has a quality which is called as biramus. Okay, what is biramus? Biramus or biramus? Biramus means that, look at the difference over here. I've given two differentiating figures over here where the appendage over here is only one segment. Okay, there's only one appendage. Whereas over here, can you see how it has split into two? So since it has split into two, this can be called as biramus. Okay, so biramus can be seen over here in this subphyla. The examples which are seen in this subphyla, the extinct ones, they're not alive today. This can be called as Triarthus, or there could be the example called as Dalmatitis. Okay, so Triarthus and Dalmatitis, whatever you're seeing over here are the fossil forms of these organisms. Okay, so they are not at all in existence today. All right, coming to the next one, the next subphyla, we can call that as the Chelicerata, and let us see why it is called as Chelicerata. What are the different features of it? Okay, over here we see that the body here in this organism is made up of an anterior 6 segmented cephalothorax. Okay, so let's see what that is all about, 6 segmented cephalothorax. Now, when we see this organism, look at this over here. The whole body is going to be divided basically into two regions. All right, the anterior part is going to be called as the prosoma, and the posterior region, okay, or the abdomen region is going to be called as the opistosoma. Okay, so you have the prostoma and then you have the opistosoma. So as you can see here that it is this opistosoma which can be divided into two regions again. There can be two regions there. One is called as a mesosoma and the second one is called as a metasoma. All right, so that is the two divisions of the opistosoma. Talking about the anterior region, what was the anterior region called as? It was called as the prosoma. That anterior region bears 6 pairs of appendages. Okay, so can you see here how there are 6 pairs of appendages here? Okay, one pair over here is going to be modified, and that modified one is going to be called as the Chelicerae. Now, because it is called as the Chelicerae, that's why we call this subphylum, we named it as the Chelicerata. Okay, because it is bearing Chelicerae. For the word bearing, we always use the word atta. So, atta means having or atta means bearing. Alright. So, here we see that antenna and jaws both are absent. Alright. Like when I told you about an insect, they're having modified jaws. They've got an upper jaw, they've got a lower jaw. But talking here, the antenna are not present either and neither are jaws present. Okay. Next. Let's see the examples here. Look at the first example, that is of a scorpion. Can you see that scorpion over there? Okay. The scientific name of a scorpion, we can call it as Palamneus. Okay. The Palamneus. Also, the living fossil, that is the king crab, belongs to this subphyla too. Coming to the third one, that is Mandibulata. Mandibulata comes from the word mandible. Okay. So, when we talk about mandible, what is mandible? For us, mandible is our lower jaw. Okay, so this lower jaw, this whole jaw right from here to here is one bone only. That is the mandible. So here we're going to see that these organisms are going to be having well-developed mouth parts, and in those mouth parts they're going to be having a mandible. That is why we're going to categorize these as Mandibulata. Okay. Now, when we talk about Mandibulata, there could be either aquatic or they may be terrestrial. Okay, either aquatic or terrestrial. Now, also we see ahead that the body here is divided, and how is it divided? It's divided into either it could be divided into two parts or it may be divided into three regions. So if it is divided into two parts, both of the parts would be called as, one, it would be called as a cephalothorax. Look at this region over here. Can you see how cephalothorax deals with, one part is called as the head region, second part is the thorax. So the head and thorax is fused together, which is going to be called as a cephalothorax, and the second part, that is this region here, this is known as the abdomen region. All right, so there is a cephalothorax and then there is an abdomen. Otherwise, the animal could be divided into three regions, where the first region would be the head, the second region would be the thorax, and the third region would be the abdomen. So the body of this subphyla, okay, that is the Mandibulata, could be either in two regions or it may be of three regions. Okay. Now seeing ahead, we see that this is the actual subphyla which have all the sense organs which we were talking about. So we can say that the head bears antennae, it bears mandibles, it has a well-developed maxilla. We're going to see that these have well-developed mouth parts. Can you see here? These are the antennae. Okay. Then we see this here. This is the mandible. Alright. So this is going to be helping that insect to chew, to suck on the food, to grasp the food and hold on to the food too. So we see here that the head is bearing all these parts. The head is also, you can see it bears the eyes. Okay. In different insects, they could either be having a simple eye or they could be having a compound eye too. Alright. So basically children, we learnt about all the different features of an arthropod. Okay, let's go ahead, let's learn or let's revise the different features that we had spoken about. Okay, revising the different features, we first see that when we talk about an arthropod, the exoskeleton. Okay, the exoskeleton, what was that made up of? It was made up of a material called as chitin. Alright, then when we talk about the different systems, beginning with the body cavity. Okay, the body cavity was called as hemocoel. Okay, body cavity was called as hemocoel. The body fluid, continued here, body fluid was called as hemolymph. Okay, body fluid was called as hemolymph. Then what else did we see? We also spoke about the circulatory system. Circulatory system. Okay, the circulatory system here was an open type. Okay, some of the arthropods were having a blue colored pigment, which is a copper containing pigment. And what did we call that blue colored pigment as? We had called it as hemocyanin. Don't forget that. Okay, then we moved on to the excretory system. Okay, when we talk about the excretory system, okay, there were different types of organs present in different arthropods. First, there could be malphigian tubules. Okay, then there could also be the presence, either after malphigian tubules there could be green glands. Okay, green glands, or there could be glands which were called as the coxal glands. Okay, the coxal glands. Then next, after this, after the excretory system, we have the nervous system. Okay, and this nervous system, what was it made up of? It was made up of the nerve ring. Okay, there was a nerve ring, and where was the nervous system placed? Do you remember that? Nervous system was ventral in position, so it was a double ventral nerve cord. Alright, double ventral nerve cord. What about the heart? Do you remember where the heart was present? The heart was dorsal. It had a dorsal heart. Alright, okay. Then we moved on to the reproductive system. Well, the reproductive system was dealing with the very first part, that it is dioecious. Alright. Also, we saw that the fertilization happening was internal. So, there was internal fertilization. Okay, internal fertilization. Then we also saw that after that the most of the arthropods are oviparous. All right, oviparous, giving birth to eggs, which was the exception there, except scorpion. Okay, exception there was scorpion. Then we also saw that there was either the development, it was either direct or it could be indirect, right? What were the different examples that we spoke about? The different examples were those of like the useful ones. First, let's speak about the different types. There could be useful ones, there could be harmful ones, right? The useful ones were those of the honeybees, okay, Apis mellifera. Then we had the silkworm, that was Bombyx mori. Then we had the ones used for seafood, like the crabs or the lobsters were used. These were all the useful ones. What about the harmful ones? What did we call the harmful ones? They were called as harmful because they were actually going to be producing disease in the body. And because they were producing disease, they could be called as parasites, all right? So the parasites which were there were or rather than parasites, you can call them as vectors. So because they are transmitting the disease, not parasites. So the vectors there were the mosquitoes that we had seen. The different mosquitoes we saw were Anopheles, we saw Aedes, we saw Culex, which were spreading the diseases like malaria or filariasis, that is elephantiasis, or even dengue, right? Then we also saw the living fossil. Remember the living fossil? What was the scientific name of it? It was also called as the limulus or the king crab. Then we also saw the silverfish. We also saw the arthropod, which was the grasshopper. Grasshopper was called as the locust. All these examples we have seen in arthropoda. All right. So children, if you have any doubts about the arthropods, then do come back to our application, that is of Yupp Master app. Do sign into that app and download it, and whatever after downloading, whatever doubt that you're having, that doubt would be clarified. Any doubt you have, there is a portal, there is a place where you can go and place your doubts, write your doubts, and I personally will be handling your doubts. All right, so I do look forward to seeing you for our very next lecture, which would be upon molluscas. Okay, till then you guys stay home, you stay safe, and take care. Bye bye.